All right. We're good. So if you're able to see this, let us know in the comments and things. This is Brandon signs random pieces of paper that'll be bound into books later on. Signing session like number 7 or something like that. So welcome if you guys came along. We have special guest star Magellan, my macaw, who is enjoying his toy. I'm going to make sure things are going and hear back from you guys, and then we will be answering some questions. In case you're wondering what these are, because I need to answer this every time, these are what are called signatures that I am signing with my signature. A signature is a collection of pages that are bound into a novel, or I guess any sort of book. And this is for Elantris. We are getting a reprint on the leather bounds, and we find that it's way better for me to sign these pages early, and then they get sliced up and bound together in the book, and then we don't have to open all the beautiful packaging once they arrive and sign them and then repackage them. So this is how we are doing things now. Do we have confirmation that we are going?
Yeah, we're getting comments from everybody right now. I'm just trying to pull up Chrome.
Yes.
And it does not like to do that when I have other things happening. So I can,
and
read some questions to you.
I did see that a bunch of people posted questions on your thing saying, hey, these questions.
I pulled 5 pages of questions.
Wow.
So I'm going to be going through those first.
Okay.
For anyone who's listening, we do have some people watching. They're going to pull out really interesting questions that you haven't been asked before.
Okay.
Other than that, though, I pulled some yesterday.
Okay. And then there'll be other ones pulled from the stream, but a lot of these we're going to get from the questions you guys left earlier on the post that Adam made. We're going to try to prevent Magellan from eating any of these pieces of paper. What are you doing, bud? Yeah? Bird things? Mm-hmm. He's been really talkative today. Earlier, I was on a conference call with some people I'm working with, and Magellan insisted on sitting on my shoulder and jabbering away, so I had to put him in his aviary because he was not conducive to doing a business call. So if he's a problem with us today, then he may have to go back in his aviary. But I also brought him, let's see, eat some of your bread, bud. Do you want some bread? My father, who's visiting us and may come on the stream a little bit later, so if you have questions for my father, be thinking of those. Baked Magellan some special birdie bread that he loves, so we'll see. He's going to go dunk it. Yep, there it goes. Yes, he loves to dunk his food, whatever it is. Like if you give him a piece of cardboard to chew on and play with, he'll dunk that too. He just likes things wet when he's chewing on them, and whatever it is, he will dunk them. My children give him little toys and things to chew up, and he will always dunk those. So, Adam, what do we got?
Okay, so this first question comes from YouTube, from Margaret A. It says, Brandon, when writing those several unpublished novels before Elantris was released, what made you know that they weren't good enough? How do I know if my writing is bad or if it's good enough to be published?
Boy, this is a tough thing to decide. Oh, I knew you were going to drop that. Because that transition between accomplished amateur journeyman writer into pro / early pro is a really hard line to figure out. So how did I know? Well, it was a mixture of things. I knew partially because I had been warned up front that you're better off writing a bunch of stories and getting used to the idea of writing stories and becoming familiar with your style before you try to publish. I don't think this is absolutist as advice. It was great advice for me because it, as I've said before, took the pressure off of me in those early books that I was writing. I didn't have to worry if they were publishable or not. I didn't have to stress it because I already knew I'm going to write a few books and then I'm going to look at publishing. Really helpful for me. That would have probably been bad advice for Pat Rothfuss or J.K. Rowling, both of whom perfected early novels, I think in both cases their first novel, and really worked on them till they were great, and then sold them and they were great. It just happens that my process worked very well with hearing, don't stress about publishing early on, just write a few books first. So I had that mindset, right? I had this mindset of, I'm going to write a few books before I worry about even publishing them. That let me experiment with style. How did I know that I was getting close or that I was getting publishable? I didn't for sure. You'll never know for sure. But there were some good signs to me. One good sign was, and this started happening right before Elantris and with Elantris, is that I would give the book to my friends to read, and they would then give the book to their friends who would read them and offer comments and then ask for the next one. And then they would pass it to their friends. And by the time I get the book back, I would have, little aside, what I was doing back then is I'd do actual physical copies, and I would say, write your name on the front page in a color that hasn't been used before, and then write comments through the book in that same color so I can track who's saying what. I would get these books back after 5 months of being out there, and they've been read by 20 people I didn't know, who were all offering very flattering comments on them and wanting more. Oftentimes as a new writer, it can be hard to even get your friends to read your books. It's a really good sign when you're not just your friends, but your acquaintances and even people you haven't met are wanting to read the books. At the same time, I lived in an era where I could print off a physical copy. That's what people were reading on. I didn't have to worry about the book, getting away from me. Basically, I knew where the copy was. People would say, "Can I give this to my friend?" And I would say yes. And so it could be a concern to some people that you don't have that much control in that what I was doing over where the book's going, and I can understand that and you not wanting to do that. But that was a good sign for me, right? Another good sign was that I started to get personalized rejection letters on the submissions I was getting. Agents and editors started writing me a several page, "This is why we're rejecting this," as opposed to the, "Here is a form rejection letter. Thank you for your submission. At this time it isn't what we're looking for, but keep trying, thumbs up." The generic ones that they give. Another good sign to me was just how much I was enjoying it. How fulfilled I was by telling these stories, and my own instincts after writing them for a while on how good they were. And that's very biased to my own personal experience, which is going to be wrong for some of us, right? So we are all generally going to be bad judges, particularly at first, at how good our writing is. For most of us, we're going to think it's better than it is. But for a sizable but still minority of us, it's going to be better than we think it is. Did I get that verse first? It's going to be, most of us is going to be worse than we think it is. For some of us, it's better than you think it is. And this is just practice. This is why I talked so much about like that last video I put up that was the keynote for the young adult festival. This idea of make sure that this is fulfilling you and you're doing it primarily because it fulfills you. And then start saying, all right, now how can I monetize this? It's a long, rambling question that basically boils down to I couldn't be sure, but my instincts were saying I was close.
This one from Facebook, from Nikita Rowley. They say, which character cost you the most to write and why?
Which character cost me the most to write? What an interesting way to phrase that. Cost me the most. Probably Rand, I would guess, because as a character, I was really invested, as a reader, I was really invested in Rand from the Wheel of Time. And I think that in a lot of ways, like the Wheel of Time characters took a bigger toll on me emotionally than a lot of the characters from my own books, which might seem weird to you. But remember, I was coming to the Wheel of Time with 15 years as a fan, and this fandom reaching back to my childhood. And with a lot of the books I'm writing, I know it's going to be hard, for instance, to write certain character scenes, but I've had years to prepare for those scenes, for those characters, and that scene that's coming up, because I am a planner, is a deeply ingrained part of who that character is and how I see them. And so I would say it's probably Rand. Good way to phrase that question.
This next one is from Twitter, from Udi Kumra. They say, I know how to do the big stuff in world building, religions, government, history, etc. How do you go about doing the little details like food, music, architecture, etc. that actually build the vibe and the move of the setting of a story?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of times if you can get those little things right, they can be more important for making your setting feel real than the large-scale things. So the large-scale things do tend to play into plot a little bit more. So, couple points. My old standby point on world building is don't feel like you have to do everything in every book. Ask yourself what's important to a given character and important to the themes of your story, and do a few of those things really well, even if they're the small things. Food lore is obviously very important to George R.R. Martin, and it becomes a big part of the Game of Thrones books. Whereas food lore itself isn't as big of a deal in a lot of other fantasy books. Wheel of Time deals less with food lore, for instance. And so ask yourself what you're fascinated by, because what you're really interested in, what you've done your research on, is going to lend a level of authenticity to your story that's invaluable. So do a couple of things really well instead of everything poorly, is my recommendation on that. In this case, you can often use these little details. Food lore is a great example, but customs and things like this to either add familiar resonance to your story, meaning, this is a very odd fantasy world, but they all like dessert and have it after every meal, which is a kind of cool thing that's like what we do here that you can build up and use, or you can use it to be very different, to say, be aware that this world is very different. Men and women eat different things in Alethi culture, most Vorin cultures, actually. And so that is different from the way that we work. And so you can use that to distance or to add resonance, either way. But whatever it is, do things that you're interested in, particularly in your early books. Plumb the depths of your own passion and find the things that you're really excited by, and let those be a hallmark for your stories. Remember that a few small details painted well are better than 3 pages of description in almost every case. What do you want to do? What are you doing? Go back up and I'll have you do your tricks and you get a treat.
It's like he understood you.
Come on. Do you want to get a treat? No, you want to come over and be on my shoulder. He really wants to get... So I wear these jackets, and he loves buttons. And I have certain shirts that I've let him chew the buttons off. They're just, kick-around shirts. They're like, ones I don't button and just leave open with a t-shirt underneath. And he has eaten the buttons off of those, so he feels like he should be able to get these buttons, which I don't want to let him have. So, all right, we'll see. Hey, Jello, use the force. Good bird. So there you go. He's very proud of that trick. He does that one when we don't ask him to, because he would like to have treats. So we'll let him chew on his almond for a minute. We'll see after the next question if he'll do his other trick for you. He only has 2 right now. We're working on a 3rd one.
This next one is kind of related to something you touched on in your last answer, but it comes from YouTuber Jane Sagan. And she says, is diabetes prominent in Vorin women, or is their physiology and that of the sweeteners different enough that the diet affects their bodies differently?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I actually saw this question when it came through. No, I would say no, for a couple of reasons. One is, the sweeteners are not, it's not like they're eating candy. They do eat candy, but it's not like they're, I would say glycemically and things like this, their average meal is not going to be as high as our average meal even, modern day, because, again, their grains are not refined. Yes, they're adding sweeteners to things, but a lot of them are fruit sweeteners. And they're getting probably less of a load than a person eating a bowl of white rice in our culture. So, no, it's a really interesting question. It made me think, but that's the answer I came to. Hey, Jello, do you want to do your other trick? Yeah? Okay. Dragon. Yeah, good bird. So, instead of spread your wings, which a lot of people do, we're teaching him a different command for that one. And of course, instead of wave bye-bye, we came up with the thematically appropriate trick to do in this household. So,
This next one is also from YouTube, from Hallstrand Books. Says, when planning multiple eras in Mistborn, did you know, for example, all the metals in Magic when you published the Final Empire, or did you leave open areas that you hinted at so that you could later explore and fill in the magic?
Final Empire is an excellent example because it established what my model became. So I wrote Final Empire without having an idea, but not having the entire 9-book sequence plotted, not even the 3-book sequence. I wrote that one and said, let's just write the book and see if it works. This is generally what I like to do rather than planning out the whole series. The exception to this was Stormlight, which needed the entire series planned out first. But with Final Empire, Mistborn, I was able to write the first book having ideas of what I wanted to do, but just make that book good. And then I sat down and said, all right, the first book worked. I have the characters where they work. Now let's build the series. And when I did that, I went into a lot more depth on the metals, but I did still leave... I knew basically what the other metals were going to do, but I didn't have the mechanics down because I didn't have... I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Like playing with time... and all the stuff in Ferrochemy where I'm playing with connection and things like that, these were all kind of fundamentals of the Cosmere that I wasn't 100% sure how I wanted to play out. And so I basically kind of did the best of both worlds, quote unquote. I left those holes knowing what they were probably going to be, but I was very careful not to give too much about them in the original trilogy, just in case what I wanted to do didn't end up working. And that's worked out pretty well. I did manage to finish writing books 2 and 3 of Mistborn before I released the first one, so I could make sure that the continuity on the narrative really worked. Still, there are some things that I would change. I was much younger as a writer back then. I think some of the stuff in the 3rd book, though it clicks together, doesn't click together quite as well as I wanted it to. Ending of the 1st book, I've talked about before. But I'm pleased with that process, and though every author has to use a different method, I do suggest trying that one. It's worked very well both for Mistborn and for Skyward. Worked a little worse in Reckoners, to be honest, because the first book I did not deal with any multi-dimension stuff, but I built it in after wrote the first book, went back, made sure the first book worked. Then I wrote books 2 and 3, and I was never quite satisfied with how the interdimensionality worked in that series. I think the magic system ended up cutting a few too many corners. So in that case, doing it from the get-go from book 1 instead of writing book 1 and then building it might have worked better. Book 1 remains the strongest of the Steelheart series, I feel, because of that reason. But regardless, it's been an effective method. It worked very well for Mistborn. It works very well for Mistborn Era 2, and it has worked really well in Skyward so far.
Christopher Gearhart from Twitter says, I was wondering what your approach was for building magic systems. Do you start with broad strokes and themes and develop powers from there, or do you start with the powers themselves? Also, how much do you change the system through your revisions process?
So, generally, magic system is one of those things that I lock in pretty solidly and then stick to, except for that one big revision point, which for a series is generally after the first book. Because why that works so well for me is a lot of times a magic system, I'm not going to know how much flexibility it has for storytelling, how visually it works, and all of these sorts of things until I've written with it. And so, yeah, whether I start with the powers or the themes, it's basically been even 50-50. Mistborn, I started with the powers and then built the themes out of it. Basically, I started with some cool visuals on manipulating the metals. I then built the high story because, for those who know the history of Mistborn, know that I wrote an entire book that was not a high story before I wrote Mistborn that used the magic. We'll release that someday. I call it Mistborn Prime. So I had a bunch of those powers in hand. Then I built the rest of them kind of out of what would I want for a thieving crew. You might hear my children thumping around upstairs. Apologize for that. They're coming to get dinner from Grandpa. And with Stormlight, I started with themes. The theme being, I want something that evokes the idea of the fundamental forces, and though, of course, changed to Rosharan. I kind of built the religion and the world, and then developed powers naturally out of that to see what would work. So I've gone both directions for the two of my major fantasy series, and I found both very effective.
This next one is from, again, YouTuber Robert Rudd. They want to know what your favorite Switch game is.
Favorite Switch game? This is unfortunately me cheating, so I'll give you two. My favorite Switch game so far has been Dark Souls 1. Remastered and re-released on the Switch. That is cheating because it was not originally a Switch game, and I had already played the game and was well aware that I absolutely loved it. If I'm going to go with actual kind of game built for the Switch, it would be Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild was just... Having played Zelda since the old days, right? I've told you guys this story. I bought the gold box Zelda for my birthday, my 12th birthday, I think it was. My dad gave it to me. And he had to search far and wide for that game. And it blew my mind because it had a save function built into it. First game I ever played with a save function. Just been a big Zelda fan ever since. I've played most of the games, missed the GameCube era one, so I do have a hole right there. But really liked how Breath of the Wild felt like Zelda, but did something new with it. And I know a lot of people didn't like the mini dungeons. I love the mini dungeon idea, just because it was so different from the big, vast dungeons, which I know are cool, but I'd played lots of those. And so having each dungeon be one or two puzzles to break up the gameplay was really a lot of fun to me. Just thought that was an excellent game. And I love watching the speedruns of people who, go get off the starter plateau there, and then just like find a log, hit it a bunch of times with the time stop, launch themselves straight into Ganon's throne room and kill him. I love speedruns after it takes me, 200 hours. It didn't take me that long, but Zelda's like, you can put 80 hours in that game pretty easily and finally beat it and someone else beats it in essentially a minute and a half.
More than that if you're going for all the Korok seeds.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I went for a lot of those.
I don't know how people can do it without using a guide. I mean, that's just insane.
I didn't get them all. I didn't use a guide, but I did have the little mask that shows you where they are when you're close to one. I did not get nearly all of them. I think I got
there's 900 and something.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It's a good game. Looking forward to the sequel. I'm glad that they're doing one. I think that this idea, this same theme of Zelda could use another idea. But I've really enjoyed the Switch overall. I really like Animal Crossing, even though it's not much of a branding game, because Dark Souls is my favorite game series, so you'll understand what type of game I like from that. But
it's harder to get two games farther apart on a spectrum than those two.
But Animal Crossing has got my wife playing a video game on a console system for the first time in her life. And it's let her understand my children, who all love video games, I think, a bit more. Because in the past, she would be like, you've been playing for a half hour. Why do you need any more time? You've played that level. You've been doing it for a half hour. She'll get the Switch now, and 3 hours later, she's rearranged her room 7 times. And she's like, 3 hours? Really? And I'm like, yes, this is why maybe a half hour, may not be adequate sometimes when a kid is really into a game. So it's been great.
Another question that's related to your answer is they wanted to know what your native fruit was.
My native fruit is pears.
Oh.
Yep. We have pears, and then peaches we got from the Nook Miles one, and then my brother gave us. No, oranges were our Nook Miles one. My brother gave us peaches and cherries, so we're only missing apples, which
we need to connect because we have, yeah.
So there you go.
Cool. This one's from Twitter, from Brianna Scow. They say, my writing flows best when I'm in discovery writing. but I'm very disorganized and easily distracted, so I often end up trapped in brainstorming mode trying to focus all of my thoughts. Do you have any advice for getting out of constantly planning and moving on to actually drafting?
There's a few tips that have worked for me and for people I know. And so run down these and see if any of them work for you. With all writing advice, your mileage may vary, right? But few tips that work. So first one is deadlines. Saying, I am allowed to do this brainstorming or this prep work for this amount of time or this number of days, and then I have to write. And I have to be very, I have to be very firm on giving myself those deadlines. That's why sometimes writing groups can be really handy in helping you to have that deadline set for yourself. Sometimes changing the environment for writing and going and writing longhand in a park can be the thing that really helps people. This does work pretty well, particularly if there are some writers, both discovery and outline writers, who have real trouble writing something wrong. They feel once they get it on the page and it doesn't feel right, that they have done something wrong and they've ruined this beautiful idea. And sometimes writing it longhand, where you can trick your brain and say, it doesn't have to be perfect until I put it in the computer where I can do a revision and draft of it. Helps you to just write it out longhand, lets you do that sloppy draft in a different mode than typing on the computer. It also gets you away from some distractions a lot of times. So sometimes longhand is the answer. For some authors, the answer is actually set up your writing environment separately from your brainstorming sessions and your writing sessions. Maybe you brainstorm longhand, or you brainstorm on your laptop, but you do your actual writing on your desktop with the same music playing at the same time. Separating those modes can be really handy for helping some writers to get out of that endlessly planning. Oftentimes what's really handy for you is to decide what's causing that. Like I said, for a lot of people, there's this subconscious feel that when you put it on the page, it's not quite right. And so you must have done something wrong, and so you should be planning more before you write. And that's actually the wrong instinct. I'll keep talking while I go do this, but I got to get a new thing. It's the wrong instinct because you aren't going to get good at making what's in your head go on the page until you've practiced. But it's a right instinct in that, yeah, you're not quite doing it right yet. And there's a part of you sometimes that just says, I can't write it poorly. I'm ruining this beautiful idea. Or I must have just not planned right. So if that's causing it, that's one thing. If it really is just pure distractibility, if you have ADHD, if you have problems with focusing for other reasons, if it's just really hard for you to turn off Facebook, things like that, that's a different problem, right? And that partially is learning what your own psychology is like, and things like that. Do you want another one? All right, Jello, use the force. Good bird. Good bird. So, identifying that. Is it performance anxiety? Is it ADHD? Is it something completely different that you're just not good at writing if you haven't eaten yet for the day, and maybe you just need to have a snack first? Maybe it's the wrong sort of motivations where you haven't yet worked out, do I need sticks? Do I need carrots? Do I need something else? What makes me do what I want to have done? Dig down and try to figure out your own psychology and what's preventing you from achieving the things you want to do.
This next one is from Abigail Covelli, and she uses a term that I'm not familiar with. Maybe you are. But they say, when you're writing, do you strictly stick to your outline, or do you allow yourself a little leeway when inspiration strikes? What, in your opinion, is the right balance between planning and pantsing?
Yeah, pantsing is just another word for discovery writing.
Okay.
It's the more common one, that used more often. Writing by the seat of your pants is where that comes from. This is going to be individual, but I would say most of us pants more than we even admit. This is because Discovery writing has to happen at some part in the process. If you're an outliner, you're doing part of that discovery writing while you're outlining. That's basically you just brainstorming. You're just coming up with stuff and putting it down there and giving yourself a guide. So you're kind of front loading some of the work so that later on you don't have to have that part of your brain working. But everybody has to basically do the same amount of pantsing. It's just when they do it. And every author I know, even the strictest of outline writers, when they actually get into the chapter, they are very much in a mindset of, if this isn't working, I need to be ready to throw everything away and try something else. And so I would say that wherever you land on this that produces the fiction the way you want to is just fine. And be aware that writing really is discovery writing. It's just where you put your efforts. For an outline writer like me, we discovery write partially during the outlining phase so that when we're working on the outline, we can have more of a focus on what does this scene look like, what's going to make this scene dynamic. I know what I need to achieve in this scene because I've already done it ahead. I've already figured out the blocks I need to put in here. So now I can focus on how can I make sure this character's voice works. That's the way it works best for me. But yeah, I feel very comfortable throwing aside the outline and trying something new if it isn't working. Now, if I'm throwing out building block type stuff, what I do after that chapter, if the chapter works very well having thrown that out, I go back to my outline and I say, this worked really well going this other direction. Is this a direction I want to take the book? Is this something I should be concerned about? Do I need to rebuild my outline? And I do that sort of thing. But I try not to let myself be too constricted by any given scene because the creative process is it's hard to explain. You writers might be able to explain it better even than I can, but it feels like writing is in a sense a performance. When you're writing that chapter, you're going to do some piece of performance art that's going to get recorded on the page. And ahead of time, you might have done a lot of upfront work to give you all the tools you need for that performance. Other writers might like having no tools and just going into that performance. Then writing is like recording that performance on the page. And then afterward, revision, we have the opportunity to go back and basically add in filters, special effects, change that performance to look like what we want to beat it into shape. But that chapter writing itself is a strange creative endeavor where you're less creating a piece of a craft and more performing an art and seeing how it goes. Even for someone like myself who uses a lot of outlining.
This next one is from Condra Cosplay. And I love this question.
Yeah.
It says, if you were a Condra in a true body, what would you make your skeleton out of?
I would want some stone skeleton of like marble or obsidian or something like that.
Obsidian's cool.
Like, you can see from the things I do, I love the colors of stone. This is where Stormlight Archive kind of came from, is being able to I just love the grain and the feel of rock. And so that's what I would go with.
Cool. This next one's from Jarrett Braden. They say, with a huge interconnected work like the Cosmere, do you ever worry when introducing a new concept in a book how it may affect past and future novels?
I do. This is the biggest challenge of having a large interconnected universe like this. And the further you write, the more difficult and dangerous this becomes. And this is why I need to have a large team and some really solid beta readers. Those of you who are in the chat, thank you. Because they often, I can get, every writer can, when you're writing a book, get a little myopically focused on that book only, which can be a good thing. Most writers, that doesn't matter because that book is going to be that book. But because the interconnectedness and the continuity of the Cosmere is so important to me, it's really handy to have a lot of people looking over my shoulder saying, are you sure you want to do that because it has this ramification here? We're not going to catch all of them, but I do like that for catching them, and it is something that I think about quite a bit. It is one of the reasons why I tried to build the underpinnings of the Cosmere to be adaptable to a lot of different of the types of magic systems I like to write. This is why these kind of fundamentals of fortune and identity and connection are really what kind of drive creating the magic systems. You're often going to see me wanting to create magic systems that do similar things, and having these sort of you're done with it? All right. Having these sort of magic systems underpinnings that both drive me to ask what new can I do with this, but also have an intended connectivity between them, is really helpful in a lot of different ways. But it is dangerous. So yes, and if I were going to give advice on that, it would be that make sure your fundamentals, number one, kind of naturally fit the type of systems that you would want to build, and number two, have enough versatility that they can be adapted to a variety of different styles of system, and stay away from some of the big problems like time travel. Right? Very early on, I'm like, Cosmere can time travel into the future. You can speed things up for yourself. You can slow things down, your movement through space, but you cannot go backward. And having a few rules like that, there are not alternate dimensions in the Cosmere, right? There are different planes of existence, but there are not alternate realities. We're not going to have the sort of thing that I played with in Steelheart, because I knew I didn't have it in the Cosmere, we weren't going to do, like, the Wheel of Time loves to play with alternate continuities as one of its themes of Magic, and I love it. But it was built in and baked in from the beginning and used very well. I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. Make a few kind of rules like that, and I think that's helpful for keeping you from writing yourself out of problems with solutions that break everything. And let's just say that it is very hard to not do that, as evidenced by many film series which have a lot of different people working on them who can make their films work, but often will break the rest of the continuity in order to do so. And we can't afford to do that in the Cosmere. That's not something that I want to do.
This next one is from Raphael DePaulo. They say, to what Knight's Radiant Orders would Rand, Matt, and Perrin belong?
Whoa! Wow! Never. Oh, you like that one too? I have never heard that question. Wow. So I built the Knight's Radiant Orders so that people could naturally fit into multiples, right? And so, for instance, you could very easily see Matt as a Lightweaver, right? I just totally think that is a natural and nice fit for Matt, but it's not the only fit that would work for Matt. But it is definitely where I would place him most naturally. Where would I put Rand? Rand, if you look at kind of his power set and his theme in the stories, is probably Bondsmith. That's probably a very good match for Rand's narrative theme. He is probably very Windrunner in his characterization through a lot of it, but I don't know. There are lots of arguments, and Perrin's kind of naturally going to either be another Lightweaver because of the art aspect to Perrin, making, creating, but probably is going to be Stoneward or Willshaper instead. In fact, Willshaper fits him really well for various thematic reasons. And so I'd probably stick Perrin and Willshaper. Working with the stone, plus moving and traveling to Shadesmar, or at least, being able to see into Shadesmar with the, just kind of fits him really well. Good questions. I'd have to think about it longer before, because I might have just given the obvious answers that don't actually match with them. Do you want to come over for a sec? You're going to eat my buttons, though. All right. What are you doing? You're going to fall off. Be careful. Yeah? What? Yeah, no, you can't have the buttons. Yeah, I know. I know you want the buttons. You can't have the buttons. I'm going to put my hand over them. Yeah? What are you going to do then? You're going to get the other buttons. Oh, okay. Look, I'll give you scritches. The thing about Magellan is he loves to suck his thumb when he gets his head scratched. And you can see him trying to maneuver now to get one of his talons. I say thumb. He just likes to have one of his talons in his mouth. Or to have your thumb or finger in his mouth, which he's very gentle, as you can see, so it's not a big deal. But it's like my son likes to suck his thumb, and I do not get it. A bird should not have a suckling instinct. But you can see, just loves that. And so he gets in these really weird situations where he'll flop over upside down, trying to manage to get his thumb or his talon into his mouth so that he can get scritches like this. He is a very affectionate bird, but he also has a very large beak, which is intimidating to a lot of people. You want that pen now, don't you? Yeah? So, let's do another question.
This next one is from T. Tate Thorpe. They want to know your thoughts on the new Magic the Gathering set. Ikoria, Lair of the Behemoths.
It looks really cool. It looks... yeah, come on. It looks great. I've watched a few drafts of it. See, he will let you hold him. What are you thinking? Yeah. I haven't been able to play it yet because of social distancing rules, right? We like to do drafts here with Isaac really likes to draft, and I like to draft, and some of the artists that we work with like to draft, like Steve Argyle. And so we like to get together. It's and though I really like Magic, I played Arena for a while, and I know they have live drafts against other players now, but Magic exists to get me out of the house and doing something social. Like, that's one of the reasons I made it my hobby. Is number one, I loved it. Number two, I just needed to get out of the house. And so playing on the computer, it's not really that appealing to me. Even though the program is great and things like that, because I want to go out and see my friends. And this is an excuse to get out and see my friends and do something I enjoy. So while it looks awesome, I haven't been able to play it. That said, a lot of people are complaining the companion is breaking the game in very interesting ways. And since I don't play a lot of Constructed, I do not intersect with that very much. Several of the companions look like they'd be very fun to add to various cubes that I have to add deck building restraints. I think that, honestly, I'll go on record here. I think Companion was not a mistake, though I'm not a game designer. I think that just all companions should have the restriction to make your deck 20 bigger. If all of them had that restriction, plus maybe some other little restriction, then they would be auto-balanced even for some of the old formats. Some of them might still be broken, but they wouldn't be as broken if you had to trade the consistency of your deck for the cool consistency of always having this one card. It feels like a natural trade-off. I'm surprised they didn't make all of the companions have this 20 card deck, larger deck size restriction. I think it would just have led to a lot more interesting deck building choices and a lot more fun. And I know one of the companions does do that. And I don't know if I would have put other restrictions on also. If they all had this one and another one, if that gets too complicated, again, not a game designer. So, but it just feels like that would have been a natural thing for them to do. I'm surprised that there wasn't. Maybe there was talk about that, and they just decided too many restrictions or having too many of the same restriction just was a bad idea. Victoria
Withersy wants to know if you have any tips on improving sentence level writing.
Tip number one is read and study the sentence level writing of people that you admire, because there are so many ways to get better in different ways at sentence level writing. The trick about it is what kind of sentence level writing do you want to get better at? You can go pick up even let's say two National Book Award winners, right? Or Pulitzer Prize winners, and read them, and you will find some that are doing this gorgeous window pane prose, as I like to put it, where each word is luscious, and you'll find others that are equally worthy of the highest honors in literary fiction, who are using a very sparse, short sentence style that feels more like what you would read from a lot of genre fiction. And there are all sorts of shades and hues in between of styles of sentence level writing. One way to get better, though, is to when you do a polishing pass, have a certain set of phrases and words that you feel you overuse and that make for weaker writing than you want. That might be making you make errors in, having very vague sentences or passive sentences or things like that. And you'll notice I'm using this word a ton when maybe I shouldn't be. Not a word like said, which is an invisible word that it's okay to use said, in fact, recommended. But, if you are always saying that things are soggy, right? And there are a lot of different ways to say soggy. And perhaps you are describing things the two ways, same way too often. Set up, if you've got Microsoft Word, what we do is we do a search and replace with track changes on for that word. Or do a search and replace for that word with brackets around it. Or that phrase construction. And when you do your polishing pass, you can look through and all of those words that are trouble words for you are bracketed suddenly. And suddenly you're like, wow, I'm getting it brought out to me that I have used the word soggy 7 times in 3 pages. Maybe that really is a problem for me. Or I have this passive voice construction that I always like to use, and it's pretty weak, and wow, it's all over my writing now that I've noticed it. Things like that, that can be really handy for training yourself out of some of those things during your polishing pass. I wouldn't worry about it during your early drafts, because if you focus on it enough during your polishing passes, what I've found is it starts to seep into your brain. You start to do it in first drafts. But if you're thinking too much about it in first drafts, it will just make it hard for you to write.
A random question from me, and maybe this is a Peter question, but when we did the 10th anniversary editions for Mistborn, did you change any of your maladroitlies?
I think I left the maladroitlies in. They are a hallmark of Mistborn at this point.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, one of those words for me was maladroitly, which actually I didn't use that much, but it's a word that's more like a once per book word. And if you're using it 5 times per book instead, really starts to stick out to readers. And the whole goal with this sort of thing is to try to stop as much as possible things that stick out to readers. And you can't fix that all. I ran across someone talking about my writing. They didn't know I was going to see it. They were just talking about it on a thread somewhere. And they were pointing out phrases that they're like, these are terrible. And I respectfully disagreed, right? It's a phrase construction that I used that they found in 4 different books. And I'm like, that's the right way to say that. And it's okay for them not to like it. It's okay for it to kick them out of the book because individual tastes, right? You can't be wrong on a fundamental level with your tastes, at least not in this way. Just like you can't be wrong in saying I don't like fish in most cases. Now there are certainly ways that you could phrase I don't like fish that would be offensive or things like that. But if you just get down to I just don't like the taste of fish, nothing wrong with you. That's how being a human is. And if you do not like the phrasing of this construction, like I really have a trouble. I'll use it now and then, but if a writer uses exclamation points too much in narrative, it just starts driving me crazy. And other people, it doesn't drive crazy. That's not to say that people who do that are wrong. This is just all flavor and style things. But there are certain things like passive voice and vague language and distance from your character that'll generally be making you writing that you're using as a kind of a crutch that is making your writing weaker in the way you don't want it to be. You're not doing this intentionally because you think it's good writing. You're doing it because you've just read a bunch like that and you think that's the way it should be without understanding the problems it causes. Out of it can be very helpful. So.
A related question, considering a personal taste. In the chat from Facebook, Sarah Oswald Jones wants to know if you have a pet peeve saying that you don't like.
Pet peeve saying that I don't like. I wouldn't say that there are any specific pet peeve sayings I don't like. No more than the average person. Like, when people say, now I'm failing to come up with them. There are certain sayings you can say the exact wrong way that mean the opposite thing. Like, I could care less. Sure, I could care less will bother me, but it's funny enough that, and I know I use ones like Peter. One of the reasons Peter is such a good copy editor and editor is he notices things like this way more than most people I know notice them. He knows how words are pronounced, how they're said, and how they're used. And every day, Peter is confronted with people using language the wrong way in ways that drive him up the wall. And he's learned to channel that into helping writers do that in a way that is better. And I'm not like that. There are certain things that'll make raise an eyebrow or something, but for the most part, I'm looking at the theme of the character. If you get the theme of the character right, like character themes and character arcs, and story narrative themes, and getting your third act to connect and be a great payoff, like that's what I care about, right? That's what's really gonna get me to love a story. And you'll find that when I offer criticism of a story, I'm often trying to look at those sorts of things. And when I'm loving a story, I'll usually talk about why I love what I love, and it'll be those sorts of things.
DTV says, how long do you think it takes to find out which writing methods are best for a particular person? How much time for a trial run should a writer give to a new method to see if it's a good fit or not?
I would have to say that I've only done this really once and watched my friends do it a couple times, so my sample size is pretty small. This is an answer where I have a high chance of being wrong, in other words, and so I just want to give you that warning up front. But I would say giving a good college try to a complete story and doing it a certain way has been what has worked for me. When I wanted to practice more discovery writing, I wrote an entire book. It was Alcatraz, it was only 50,000 words, right? But I wrote an entire book to see, did this turn out the way I wanted the story to turn out? Did I learn anything from it? And when I've been doing these novellas and things like this, where I'm like, I'm going to practice this, having a full, complete story, even if it's a short one, is really handy. So for me, I won't know if something isn't working probably until I have finished the book, or these days until I've gotten significantly far in the book. There are very few books that I don't finish. Even Apocalypse Guard, which we didn't release, I finished the book. So...
Spencer Walther asks, Lopen clearly states he doesn't consider himself a broken character, like all the other knights. Do you consider him a broken character?
I do not. And again, broken is a term with a lot of baggage. Let's point that out. I would rather use the terminology that a given person is comfortable with and let them put definitions on that themselves, because the way I view it, I don't really view most people as quote-unquote broken, even if they may use that terminology. What they might have is they might have certain mental health issues that they haven't yet figured out how to work with, that are integral to who they are, but not broken, just still practicing, right? And that's how I would define a lot of people, but I don't get to define it for those people, if that makes sense. One of the things I like to do is have a variety of viewpoints in my stories to make sure I'm kind of running the gamut on this. And I think some of the characters in my stories would say, yeah, something in me is broken. You can talk about all the funny business you want, Brandon, about just needing to practice. Something in me is broken, and I need to learn to deal with that, either fix it or learn to not let it ruin me. There are people that I've talked to that's how they described it. I've talked to other people who say, no, I'm not broken. Broken implies I'm a less valuable person, because of that phrase. And that is something that I never want to imply, and so it is a dangerous word to use. I let people in the fiction use it because people in real life use it, but just want you to be aware of that. And I want to offer... So the idea that a person needs to be quote-unquote broken to be a Knight Radiant is a part of the world that a lot of people talk about. I actually intend Lopen to be a counter-argument to that. But people in world would disagree with me. They'd say, no, he's got some of these things. But if Lopen has them, we all have them. So there are no not broken people, which also makes the word broken just completely wrong phrase to use, if that makes sense. So that is how I view it, but I admit that some of my characters would disagree with me. I'm going to put this one aside, and then we're going to do some fan mail. Let's... Someone has, and then we also will probably show you guys the poster that we showed off. We actually have a print copy of that. So that will be very fun. let's get all of these over. And at some point, my father will be coming down to. My father is wonderful. He is a character. He has lots of stories. I get my storytelling instincts from him. Let's hope he doesn't embarrass me too much, because he really has a lot of good dirt on me. Oh, sorry, Magellan. Why don't you toss me that box? Oh, it says fragile.
Yep.
Don't toss it to me. All right. So I have no idea what this is. My team looked at it first.
So there's a little tab on the top. You can just pull.
It's from Patrick. Patrick in California. So they all said I'm going to enjoy this. It says pull. Okay? Pull.
It's packaged very well.
It's packaged very well. Okay. Am I supposed to pull anything else? Hello, Brandon. For your personal copies, suggest you broad art them. Plastic protective sleeve. Hope to see you when all this curtain magic is over. Oh, Patrick, is this is the Patrick I know? Yeah. This is the Patrick who's a bookseller, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it is from a bookstore.
Yeah,
I do know
it's
that.
from Patrick, who often is involved in Mysterious Galaxy. He is awesome. I love Patrick. And if it is different Patrick, email us so I know. But look at that. He has created a cool little slipcase to put the reckoners in that is handmade.
So there's a card on the inside too.
It's a card on the inside. Oh, there it is. Patrick Heffernan, bookseller, modern first editions and collectibles. Oh, Patrick, you have a collectibles thing. That's awesome. Patrick is great. He's been one of these booksellers who's been in my corner from the beginning and was hand selling like Elantris and Mistborn, 15 years ago. So, Patrick, that is awesome. Thank you for this. It is super cool. And I will give that to my team. They're going to put some Reckoner's books in it, and then maybe we'll set it visually. That's awesome. I didn't know you had a what do you call that? A collectibles book business. So okay, let's do the post. Oh, we've got my dad. We're gonna do my dad, and then we'll do the poster. So
You can do the poster.
you want to do the poster? All right. So you guys are getting 3 cool things in a row. So showed up today. I'm gonna do this one first.
Okay.
Okay. So if you didn't see the announcement, you should go look at it. But here is what the Bridge 4 poster looks like. Joe's gonna try to eat it. I won't let him. It turned out so well. We are really excited about this. So go look at the post about this. Some of you expressed concern to us about something. So we asked for a test. Actually, we were going to get this anyway, weren't we? I think so.
Yeah, but it just showed up today.
So the poster was going to be folded up and shipped with the books. And folded up, it looks like this. And we took a long, hard look at this and said, wow, that folds right across Kaladin's face.
The picture does not do it justice for how wrinkly and folded it is.
It is wrinkly and folded, and we said we can't give this to people. There's no way. It folds too many times. I didn't realize they were going to fold it as many times as it takes to make it the size of the cover of the book to go with the book, which I guess makes sense.
Which is mini folds.
Which is mini folds. It is this mini folds. So we're not going to do that. We will be shipping the poster to you some way that is not folding it. We have managed to back out of having them do it. They'd sent us these tests so that we would be able to okay it, and we are going a different direction. So I have to warn you, we're not sure how we're going to get the poster to you. It's possible we'll turn it into one of the stretch goals. It'll be a lot more expensive to ship you all a tube with the poster, but we feel like that's what we're probably going to have to do. Because if you got that, like half of you would throw it away, the other half of you might frame it, but then every time you looked at it and there was a wrinkle on Kaladin's face, you'd be like, oh man. So we may have to combine 2 of the stretch goals we were planning, or something like that, but we will make sure that the poster does not get folded. Those who had the warning, I'm worried about that folding. You were right. I'm glad you raised the concern. Hopefully we would have seen this and noticed it anyway, but you had it on our radar, so you helped out with this. So it's not going to be folded. And we're going to have my father come. We're going to push Jello to the side here, and I'm going to keep signing these things. And this is Wynn Sanderson. Taught me everything I know, except about fantasy and science fiction. It was your mom who was the sci-fi fantasy fan.
That's true. Good evening, everyone.
Royal Chef Wynn. He visits us sometimes and fixes us food.
Our local rock.
Yep, he is our local rock. I'm going to be putting these in front of you because I need to be placing them. So, but yeah, if you guys have questions for my father,
We have one already.
yes, go ahead.
They just
throw
want to
them at
know
him.
what the funniest thing Brandon did as a child.
The funnest thing?
Funniest.
Funniest thing? He had a little friend named Jacob that lived 2 doors down.
Jacob Youngblood, if you're out there, hello, Jake.
And we were doing a little work around the back on a patio, and Brandon and his friend found some cement, put it in his little wagon, or little red wagon, mixed it up, and poured it out on the lawn.
No, it was in our kiddie pool. We mixed it up in the kiddie pool.
Oh, sorry. He mixed it up in his kiddie pool.
Yeah, with shovels to mix it.
Yeah, they did a real good job.
And
They
then
were
it
hard.
hardened overnight, and then you couldn't get the shovels out anymore.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
So that was really exciting. I think the funnest thing that I ever had with Brandon is at the time I was working at the University of Nebraska Board of Regents, and his mother called, and I was in a board meeting with the regents and all of the campus presidents making a budget presentation. His mother called me and said, it's an emergency that you have to come home. And it takes me about 20 minutes to get home. And she was down by Jacob's house, about 3 doors down. And so I asked her what. She says, you go up there right now and discipline your son. I said, well, why? And she says, you'll see. Well, when I went up there, Brandon was sitting on the front steps with a little water snake, and his mother was scared of the snake.
She's Indiana Jones in snakes.
So as soon as she would get close to him, he would raise his hand and shake the snake. So then she would go around to the garage door, and then he'd run around and open that door and shake it, and then she'd go around to the back, and he would shake it because she was scared that he would let the snake go in the house, and then we'd have to sell the house or burn it down. So here I am in getting a budget ready for the governor and the legislature. So I went to Brandon and I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm having a lot of fun. I said, what's it going to take for me to get that snake from you? He said, $5. I paid him $5.
If you want to know why I have birds, by the way, my father had an Amazon and a cockatiel when I was a kid. Fred, and I don't remember the Amazon's name. And I fell in love with birds then, so.
And
I've
probably
always had
fish,
birds.
too.
He had fish, too.
Brandon
you're going to
loves
tell that story.
aquariums.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Brandon loves
Sorry.
aquariums.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Tell the fish story. Go ahead.
Well, I had an 88-gallon octagon down, and Brandon and I, he was our only child at the time, and we had a fantastic room. It had a fireplace, TV, red carpet, paneling all the way around, and an 88-gallon octagon. And I had fish in there that were bigger than my hand. Severin, a couple other fish, just phenomenal. And about every 2 years I'd break it down and I'd put all the fish in great big 5-gallon cans, and then I'd aerate them so each one of them had some oxygen. I don't know where his mother was. It was a Saturday, so she usually took off and left us alone to her detriment. But he was probably about 5, and I didn't have any charcoal, and so I said, the store is only 15 minutes away. Please watch the fish. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. I'm going to lock all the doors, and I've got a key. He said, okay. I came back, and he was so excited. He says, Dad, I caught every one of those fish out on the red carpet, outside, out of every single one of the 5-gallon cans, which I had about 4 of them. All the fish were lined purportedly from the large to the small. I just sold the aquarium and gave up.
I don't remember this one, but this story has been told at my wedding, so it is now official Brandon Sanderson lore and canon. But I will mention I don't remember doing this one. I was only 5 though, so I wouldn't.
Yeah, he was not, but he was so proud he caught
I gave you
and
bread.
he had
Bread.
water all over. He was just so. Some of those fish were almost as big as he was.
They want to know if you can remember something embarrassing that Brandon did when he was a child. Maybe the fish story counts, but
Oh, I don't know if I dare tell that one.
You can tell that one.
Not the primary.
Yes, you can tell that one. Go ahead.
Well,
it's the best Brandon story that exists.
In our church, we have what we call a primary. It's for young children. And what you do is you have an opening exercise, you have a prayer, You have a little 2-minute talk.
That a kid will give.
A child will give. The child gives the prayer. The child gives a little talk, and then we sing songs. Then we go to class. Well, and the head of that organization is a woman, and she happened to be my executive secretary. Her name was Cindy. And I was just walking down the hall, and she's only about 4'4", and comes over and just slugs me on the arm. And she says, "How dare you teach your son those kinds of words?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She says, "Well, Brandon gets up and said," and this is his 2.5 minute talk, which lasted about 5 seconds. "We don't say shit. We say, oh no, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen." So she said, "How dare you teach your son that kind of language, because that means you're setting a bad example." I tried to tell her it was the mother, and then I got in real trouble when I was trying to not take ownership of teaching him how to swear. And that's a true story.
That one was told at my wedding also. I'll have everyone know.
I'm going to publish a book. It's called The Truth About Brandon Sanderson.
The tell-all.
I was giving a very important talk about what words are appropriate for children to
I
use
thought
and
it was
which
an
ones are
excellent
not. And so it was a very important thing. The one who taught it to me was Grandma.
Well, yes, his grandma on his mother's side, yes, she liked to swear.
She was the wife of a lumberjack. She used lumberjack's language.
Yes.
But I was giving a very important, useful information to those kids.
The kids enjoyed it.
Yes.
I had several parents, however, talk to me.
See what happens when my dad comes on the stream. Yeah.
I'm just answering the questions because I speak truth.
And the next one is, do you read Brandon's books? And if so, which is your favorite?
My favorite's Miss Bourne.
That was easy. Okay. They want to know what your hobbies are.
My hobbies are working for my daughters and my sons now that I'm retired.
He is a fantastic baker. He makes baguettes that are to die for. Dill bread. He baked bread here for Magellan, who is ignoring his bread and wanting to get on our shoulders. But
I come down about every 2 months to take care of Brandon and his family and his employees, and I bake all day. One of Brandon's favorite is called the Cosmere cookies.
yes,
Which are butterscotch cookies and a special formula of
oatmeal scotchies
oatmeal scotchies.
with some cinnamon. That's my favorite cookie.
And just talk to Adam; he'll send you the recipe. It's highly classified.
Oh, boy.
It's like Coke, it's kept in a vault.
Top secret.
And he'll. I did not know until yesterday where he learned how to eat these.
Oh boy, here we go.
Does anybody want to know?
I'm sure they want to know.
Yes, with that tease.
Well, in Nebraska, I had a membership at a country club, and I would take Brandon. I would work out, and he'd lift about 2 seconds worth of
I was like 8, so
8 or 9.
But yeah, I'd lift like one weight.
But Brandon really liked to swim at that time, so they had a swimming pool. He'd go out there, and I'd work out for an hour and a half, and I said, "Well, go ahead and go out there." And he said, "Well," and I said, "Here's my membership card, so if you'd like to have a snack, why go ahead." And then, so I went out about once a week for about a month. On a couple of occasions, and I don't know why, and I'm probably a bad parent, I just dropped him off, and he would go out and swim. And he was a good swimmer, so I didn't worry about it. And there was a lifeguard. He met some friends. At the end of the month, I got a $300 bill, because what they do is they bill you monthly on your membership. He'd been helping out a few new friends that he found around the swimming pool, and ate the
Oatmeal scotchies and hot dogs.
hot dogs every single day.
Yeah. You gave me the card. They had cookies.
They did.
I was 8. That math adds up to me. Your other hobby is you make jewelry?
Yes, I do. I worked in the campus up in White Plains, New York, and I had an employee that made jewelry for about 7 different jewelry stores, and my daughter was living with me for a summer off semester, and she wanted to we went up to this little place where you could buy jewelry, and it was $400 for the type of necklace she wanted, and I said, I'm not going to pay that. Well, I was talking to my employees about it, and Zena came and said, look, if you'll go get a strand, I'll show you how to put it together. And that was one big mistake. In fact, tonight we're going to be up making jewelry, so I used natural stones. In fact, Brandon, we went down about 2 years ago to Tucson.
Tucson Gem Festival,
And
I bought a bunch of fossils
he
from the
got
office.
fossils for his inner sanctum, and I got a whole bunch of stone jewelry, Larimar, all kinds. And so we
We
just
should
have
do
fun.
show and tell with my fossils sometime. I like fossils.
Yes, he does. He always has.
That's
got
a
a
lot
little-
to move. We should do that when the office is
Yeah,
open.
we should do that when the office is open. I got my first one when I was a kid. I actually went and visited my dad's brother, who was an educator, and he took me around. I live in Nebraska, but he was out here in Utah. We went to the University of Utah, and I had always wanted a trilobite, but they were like $10, and I was a kid, and that was a lot of money, and I had never seen one for sale, and he bought me a trilobite. Just a little trilobite.
Well, Brandon, when he was probably 12, volunteered at the University of Nebraska
Yeah, I did.
Museum, which Nebraska, probably next to Wyoming and Montana, had the most dinosaur bones, and also a little.
They
gift
called it
shop.
the Encounter Center for
And,
kids to
yeah,
go
you
in.
worked on the Encounter Center.
Yep.
That's where he learned to like.
Loved that. That was I was just a little volunteer kid, and they had like a little sand pit that you could dig in and find your own fossil. And they were just little crinoids and things like that. But and then they had hissing cockroaches that you would get out and show the other kids. And then they had a legless lizard and a hognose snake that I would.
And a tarantula.
And a
That's where I did
tarantula,
go
yeah.
in.
And you got them out and showed them to the kids that came in. And at around that age, I had found something I thought was a fossil. It was a very round stone that I thought was a dinosaur egg. And I sent it to the professor of paleontology at the University of Nebraska, saying, "Hey, I think I found a dinosaur egg. You guys might want this." And he sent me back a really nice letter saying, "Well, this is a rock of this style. Looks like a dinosaur egg, but that's because it probably went through this process." It was really a nice letter that he sent me, and along with some paraphernalia. So that was cool. I still remember that little rock. I don't know how I thought it was a dinosaur. It was like that big, but
I think Brandon also can tell you about the bow and arrow, the arrows in the side of the.
I'm not going to tell that story. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
I came home one day and.
You never found out about it. I told you about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
He also told me about the how he drove the Mercedes and. I
That
came out in the garage and there was oil all over, and I did not find out until later. A speed bump about 110 miles an hour.
I hit a dip in the road at 30.
Yeah, speed bump at 100.
It was 30, and they later put a sign warning people about it because it was going through an intersection. So yes, but I did ruin my dad's car, and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't know I'd cracked the oil pan until you came out.
It's
And
a
you're
cast
like,
iron oil pan on a little convertible 450 SL.
did that on a date. I was not going 90. It was
Your brother turned you in.
It was like a 35 mile an hour road. I was very responsible most of the time.
Absolutely. We won't talk about the swimming pool.
What did I do the swimming pool? Try not. The one I filled with concrete? I was 5.
No. This was, I came in from Denver. I'd flown in from Denver on some work, and it was fall.
Oh, that we turned on the heater. Yeah, I did
And
that.
I walked in, and it was just kind of dusk, and this is a big swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw 2 little heads, and I saw, it was starting to get chilly in Nebraska, steam coming up.
We turned on the heater. Why do we have a heater if we don't turn on the heater to the pool?
$800.
I think you might be exaggerating that number.
No, it was $800. I sold the thing after that. I sold the heater for $1,200. I had to pay for the $800.
I thought the worst was when we left the light on in the pool the first year we had it, and we didn't know. Nebraska, full of bugs. Don't know if you guys know. Nebraska, bugs. We left the light on in the pool, and June bugs are attracted to the light, right? And it was June bug season. We left the light on. We came back out in the morning, and there was just a blanket, like half an inch thick, I'm not even kidding you guys, of bugs in our pool.
And little,
It was so gross.
little spiders.
Yeah.
Little wolf spiders, black wolf spiders. Anything else, Adam?
Yeah, they want to know if you remember the first writing that Brandon showed you.
Brandon did not show me any writing at all.
I was super anxious about showing my writing to people.
This is truth. His mother wanted him to be a doctor, so she had talked him into enrolling in what, biochemistry?
Biochemistry. Yep.
And Brandon decided, he called me up for one day, and all of the family knew that he was in English.
I had changed to English my
But
sophomore
we were
year.
not going to tell his mother because she was going to redeem the family. Brandon was going to redeem the family from all of us wayward souls. I was down as president of the university in Atlanta, and Brandon called me, and he and I would get discounts, educational discounts, and I'd gotten him 2 years before that a good computer. And he called me up and he said, you know, I need a printer for Christmas. And I said, okay. And he said, but I know it's probably going to be more than I usually pay. They usually provide for us, each of the kids. And I said, well, I can get you a nice printer for about $200. And he said, no, that won't do. I said, what do you want? And he said, I will need a jet.
Like a laser jet printer.
Laser jet printer. So I looked it up and called him back. Says that's going to about $450 with my discount. What do you use that for? And he says, oh, I print about 1,400 pages a month. I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm writing novels.
That's the first you heard of it.
That's the first. He kept it very quiet until then.
Well, I was very anxious about showing people my writing. I've talked about this before. When I was a teenager, I hid my stories like behind the pictures. I'd print them off and hide them behind the pictures in my room.
By the time Brandon was 10 and 11, I probably bought, what?
It was age 14. 14 is when I discovered books, and that's when I charged your card. Well, I didn't do it without your permission, but we'd go to the bookstore and I'd be like, I need these. And he'd be like, all right, here's your books.
He'd go through $100 worth of books a month.
Lee Booksellers and Cosmic Comics in Nebraska, both of which are closed now, but were excellent booksellers. I would go in and be like, I need this, and Dad would buy it for me. That's why his book dedication, you can find it in, I think it's Steelheart, right?
No, I get the first.
Oh wait, Dallin has Steelheart. Yeah,
I get your first.
You got
my level of reading is Alcatraz.
Yeah, you got Alcatraz. That's right.
This is the only level my dad can read, even though he was a university president, and so I'm going to dedicate this to him because that's his level.
And it says, "Who bought me books?"
Who bought me books?
Yep.
Anything else, Adam?
Yeah, there's a jeweler on here who wants to know what your favorite gemstone is.
My favorite what?
Gemstone.
I like smoky quartz. It was my mother's favorite, and we get an awful lot of it from Colorado. I just finished a necklace for a grandniece tonight with smoky quartz.
Oh, you want to know a cool story, guys? Do you ever remember when we would go to Jackson Hole as kids? When I was just like 14, maybe 12, somewhere around there, we went to Jackson Hole, and you bought me my first ring. I don't wear a lot of jewelry, but you bought me a ring that had a big topaz in it.
Yes.
Big for my age.
London topaz is absolutely gorgeous. I got some of that too.
And when I started writing my very first book, I named a character Topaz, which is still one of Hoyd's aliases. That's where his first name came from, was the topaz that my father bought for me. So, if you've read Dragonsteel, someday I'll let everyone read it, but that's why he's named Topaz, and he had a topaz, that's where he got it in world, but name came from my father buying me a ring that was a really cool looking ring that I always kind of thought about and then named a character after. So,
Drew Bradshaw wants to know, as a parent, what do you think the most important thing to teach your kids is?
Ooh, I'm really curious.
Well, I think responsibility for your actions, your words, and your deeds, and to be kind. Brandon, it was very interesting. I'm going to tell you a story about Brandon that I'm very proud of. He lived above the garage in a semi-furnished apartment, 600 square feet. He had his water bed up there, his TV, and 4 gaming tables. And every Friday night and every Saturday, he'd have anywhere from 10 to 15 people up there.
Role-playing games. Sometimes board games, mostly RPGs.
And he was so patient, of course, until he beat the crap out of them in winning. They would all complain.
That's when we played Magic.
But he would bring in people from his church, from his school that were kind of passed by the other people. Maybe they weren't athletic. Maybe they were not socially adept. And he would mentor them. And I spent all night cooking spaghetti, French fries,
Homemade
hot
French
dogs.
fries. He still makes them. They're
Still
fantastic.
amazing.
So I think Brandon said also, he set an example for the rest of his brothers and sisters.
I'm glad you had something nice to say. I thought it was all going to be embarrassing.
Absolutely not. None of I said was embarrassing.
None of it was embarrassing. None of the swearing in church is not embarrassing.
People want to know if you still have the ring.
I do not still have the ring. I wish that I did. We had a rough time where we moved from Nebraska to Idaho, and a lot of things got lost. And a lot of my items, I was not there. I was in Korea at the time. Got carefully and delicately packed up by my brother, who was very, very kind. But somewhere in that, the ring didn't make that transfer. I don't have the trilobite either. The trilobite I kept in my wallet. That actually went with me to Korea. Kept in my wallet until my wallet got stolen when I was working at the hotel. Someone lifted it off the desk. I had it out with my PDA Palm Pilot. I was reading on that, and I turned around to get something, and someone swiped it off the table and ran off with it. And they took with it my the less valuable things like my Palm Pilot, but they did take my my trilobite. But I have gotten a new one since. Do you want to take off and go do jewelry?
One more.
One
question.
more. Okay, this one I think is interesting. They want to know, when Brandon was growing up, what did you think he was going to grow up and do? If I could talk.
Brandon is blessed with an intellect that he could do about anything. Straight A student, really loved his faculty, very conscientious, very godlike, read. I mean, I couldn't keep him in books. Enjoyed plays. His mother took him to all kinds of plays. He just enjoyed them. She would take him to things like Mistborn, and I'd take him to Star Wars. Kind of wanted to bounce out his education.
Mistborn? You mean like Phantom of the Opera is what you mean? Like
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, and you took Star Wars. Les Mis, that's it.
Yeah,
Star
no.
Wars. He took me to Star Wars, and I can still remember this. It was Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And every time Darth Vader came on screen, I'd run out of the theater and peek
I had
through
to
the
take
doors.
him outside the theater.
Yeah.
You know.
And when Darth Vader left, we'd go back in and sit
go
down.
back in.
Yeah. I was like 6 or 5 or
And-
something.
and, what we tried to do as a family, as parents, was to make sure that education was extremely important. And we wanted them to make their own decisions on what kind of career that they would follow. So we're pleased with all of our children. They're all successful. They're all educated. Slightly weird. Brandon's the weirdest.
I do not think I'm the weirdest. Lauren is by far the weirdest. Would you not agree over there?
Well, she's
peanut
just
gallery?
prematurely 80.
Yeah.
The boys are nerds, and the girls are just delightful.
Lauren is a pretty big nerd, but she doesn't look like a nerd.
Well, no, she's a
stealth nerd.
redneck.
She's a redneck.
No offense, but she does live with goats, cattle, and horses, and 3 cats and a dog, and a baby. And that priority. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dad. That was great. And I have some baguettes waiting for me when I finish this. Em, you're gonna grab Magellan, right? He's getting a little past his bedtime. He will start getting very hyper here soon. Everyone say hi to Emily.
She's at a fight.
And she's gonna take Jello. He loves Emily because she's the one that gets him out of his cage in the mornings because I'm still asleep. And you can see him puffing up because she always scratches him. Yeah. That's my father. Eventually, we'll try to get the goober on. The goober is my mother. She has lots of great stories as well.
She'll be down here next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah.
Will
so
she? Huh?
if you want to do
We
one
could-
of these a little sooner than normal.
Will she not stay through Thursday? She got like an appointment or something, then going
Well,
back.
no, I'm assuming she's going to get here, but usually do these every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
so
maybe
it'd
we'll
be
do one
off
next week so we can have the goober as well.
I'm sure Kara would be very happy about that.
Yes. Yes, her name is the goober. Her name is Barb. But her family, her sisters, her mother, everyone calls her the goober, which is a nickname my dad gave her, to the point that she just went by it even at work. She's a little bit of an inspiration for calling Lopen the Lopen, because she is not just goober, she's the goober. And that's just how it is. It's really strange to people sometimes when I'll reference the goober. I've had to get used to explaining the goober means my mother. And they're like, you call your mother goober? I'm like, yeah, the goober. She is the goober. And that's her thing, among many other things. What time are we at?
We're at 7:30 right now.
7:30? Great.
Yeah.
So another half hour or so?
Whatever you want.
Great. I'm going to do this other fan mail, and then we'll do a few more questions, and we probably will do this again next week, and have my mother on.
And while you're moving these, the common question for people who aren't on from the beginning want to know what you're signing. So maybe if you want to
Yep.
do another quick recap.
Another quick recap. So these are what we call signatures. These are the front pages of the Elantris leather bound. I am signing in them, but the actual word for this is a signature. It's like a little ream of paper that will be folded up and then sliced like this. And these are what books are made of. If you go look at books, you can often pick out the signatures, the 16-page. I don't know if they're always 16 pages, but the ones we have are 16 pages. Little things. And basically, we found that the printer of these leather bounds would package them really nicely. And we would have to take off all the packaging and sign them and then send them back. And they ended up getting dinged more often than we wanted and things like that. And it was also kind of wasteful of all this cool packaging. So we decided to go ahead and start me signing big chunks of pages like this that would then get bound into the books. And we like signing these signatures. Sometimes you do just what's called a signature page, which is different from a signature, which is confusing, I know. But it's just a page they bind right in the front of the book, and it's often of a different paper. It looks really weird. And we don't like that. We like actually getting a chunk of the book for me to sign that's going to get bound in just where it normally would be. I'm just stopping the process in the middle of printing, taking some of the pages, signing them, and then sending them back. So, this is from, let's see, Dovid. Dovid says, Dear Brandon, I hope this letter finds you well. Lots of cool things in here. And then, what would happen if Sadius, Dilaf, the Lord Ruler, Ruin, and Reyes got together for a drink? Would they talk civilly or fight? Let's see. The standout there is Dilaf. Dilaf just does not get along with people, ever, really. I feel like the others could have a really good conversation, and the Lord Ruler would eventually storm out, insisting he doesn't belong in this conversation. The rest of them, depends on when you get Ruin. Reyes and Sadius get along really well. That's a team up you don't want. So, there you go. Thanks for the question, David. And I will read the rest of this later on. We're going to put this to the side. We'll show that last thing at the end. And if you guys want to send fan mail, it will pop up. It'll be it'll be in the description, or you can look at this previous one's descriptions. And we will happily open them on the air, but I'm going to warn you, Adam or my team will look at them first. Just so we don't we get the right kind of surprises. I'm okay getting something that makes me look silly, but it needs to make me look silly in a way that is appropriate. So, let's go on with. There's the thing Mem just found.
If you don't mind, I'm going to show the address real quick.
Mm-hmm. So it'll also be in the description.
Yeah,
So,
but there it is for those who
There
are
it is.
curious.
Adam, good job. You're getting to be a real whiz at this sort of
This
stuff.
is the first one that's gone pretty seamlessly. So
We even did a little video essay that I recorded that immediately got a copyright strike. So we're working through
hopefully
that.
we'll get that up
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. The YouTube copyright system is a little difficult to work with, shall we say?
Not to use the word broken again, but
No. Well, the problem is not really on YouTube. The problem is on the way the copyright system, like this is how they have to enforce it. But I don't know that the companies enforcing their copyright should be able to use bots the way they do to auto strike things that obviously, that if anyone looked at them, would not be a strike. And so the fact that they have free reign to use these bots, like we used it unlisted, they still found it and struck it within
2 minutes.
2 minutes. It's just ridiculous that they have that power. It really feels like a lot of what's happening with copyright right now and YouTube is that the big copyright holders are doing the copyright equivalent of a slap suit, right? Where you sue somebody to keep them quiet, where they're just claiming things to keep them quiet, which is just it's not very, very useful, but it barely affects me. The people that it really affects are the true video essayists like Lindsay Ellis or Folding Ideas or, people like this that are
John Oliver.
doing a really, really good service for the community by advancing criticism of storytelling and narrative in this new way, and it's just got to be crippling for them to have to deal with this sort of stuff.
This one comes from Bonnie Hayburl. They want to know where the metaphor inspiration stuff came for the Reckoners.
So Reckoners, apologize if there are those of you who've heard this story before, but Reckoners came because I was driving. I was late to a book signing.
Specifically just the bad metaphors.
The bad metaphors.
Yeah.
Oh, not the whole story. Oh, bad metaphors. Okay, I've got a different story for that. Okay, so a lot of times to figure out a character, I've mentioned before that I just basically do a free write from their viewpoint, trying to figure out how this character sees the world and what their voice is. And I was searching for something that would work for David, that would make him interesting to write, interesting to read. And I made a metaphor that was pretty bad. And as a writer, you do this a lot, at least I do. And most of the time, I will hopefully catch these bad metaphors. In fact, 99% of the time, I'm like, wow, that's a terrible metaphor. And I delete it, and I try something else. This time, I wrote it, and it was bad enough that it made me snicker. And it reminded me of the bad metaphor contests that people have online. It reminds me of my favorite bad metaphor of all time, which is from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I'm going to misquote, but the ship's hung in the air exactly the way that a brick wouldn't, which is so bad, it's good, right? It goes around on itself. It's so intentionally bad as a metaphor that it becomes a beautiful piece of writing. And I'm like, what if I just ran with this, right? What if it's a person who thinks he's good at metaphors, and he's really not. And I loved it. It added so much fun to a first-person narrative that I had a blast writing it. It was hard to keep myself from doing it too much. And they're really hard to write. This is the thing I found, is getting a good bad metaphor is tough. That's the wrong pen. Where did I put those?
You need one? I have one.
I got one. I did put one in my pocket. Thanks, Kara. But it turned out to be really tough, but it was so delightful because it's not how I'd written before in any way. And it very much started to identify David as a character to me because it became a good metaphor for him. David as a character became this person who's over earnest, right? He's trying just a little too hard. He doesn't think before he tries these things, but his heart is in the right place, right? He's trying so hard because he's too eager to do these things. And it gets him into trouble sometimes, and it's like these metaphors. You know, he speaks before he thinks, really, if this is a metaphor that works. And he's a little over earnest, and it just made the character pop and work, which is also part of the reason why the prologue is so different tonally from the rest of the book. Because I wrote the prologue about 2 years before I actually sat down to write the book itself. And I didn't have David's personality when I wrote that prologue. So prologue of Steelheart feels different. It's okay because it's a flashback and things, but for one thing, it's a little more violent than the tone of the series ended up being. It ended up just being a little less dark because David was so fun to write. That changed the tone of the entire book in a way that I ended up really liking. And now that I like that it's not so dark because The Boys has come out, which is a comic book that began right around the same time as Steelheart. I think they beat me to the punch by about a year. That has a similar premise, but theirs is really dark. And it's nice that Steelheart didn't go that direction just because, I'm not sure that I would be capable of doing darkness like they do darkness in that show.
This next one is from Alma Tudor. They say, how has teaching affected your writing style and deconstruction power?
Teaching's been really handy. Learning to talk about my writing has really helped me learn what I'm doing, and the biggest help it does is in diagnostics. It's helped me when something is going wrong with my writing. I am much more able to find the language, even to myself, of what is wrong with this story, what do I need to fix. When I get back beta reader feedback and they're all saying something that I didn't expect them to be saying, because I've taught so much and I've had to deconstruct my writing in order to teach it, it is really a lot easier for me to put my finger on what was wrong in the story that is causing this response from readers. And so it's helped me with revisions just immeasurably.
One question that popped up on several of the pages yesterday were just requests for you to talk about how you name characters, if you pick words that mean things in other languages intentionally,
Right.
All of that.
So, I generally name characters along one of a couple of different methodologies. Most of the time these days, I am looking to the language that I've constructed, which I've built along certain lines with certain types of morphemes and certain sounds and certain feels. I sometimes will root those in an earth language to give me some sort of basis for what sort of sounds would be used and what would not be used. But it is an art, not a science, because I can often build a name out of one of those words, those languages that sounds really bad in English. So it just doesn't flow off the tongue and it is hard to read. And that's okay for a side character, but for main characters, you don't want that happening. And so there's a balance to be found where you are finding names that work really well in English, but also work really well in the linguistics of the book that you're building. Kaladin's name is a perfect example, right? Where does Kaladin's name come from? His name comes from the fact that I like to name. I built the names of the heralds, and then I tried to name a lot of people after the names of the heralds in the books. This is because it's me trying to walk the line between, in our world, a significant portion of various populations are named Michael or John or James or religious names, right? And in books, we had a question about this last time, doesn't work so well to have a lot of people with the same name. It gets very confusing, even if it's realistic. It's one of those things that it's hard to do in books, even if it's realistic, because it just makes for bad storytelling, even if it's realistic. And so, instead, I'm like, well, if I have Kalek, or Kalak, as he eventually became after the sound change name, and I based a bunch of names after Kalak, they all would have that same sort of feeling, like your name is James, except it's, no one in the Alethi culture names their kid James. They name him Jameson and Jamestown and Jamie and all those. And you look for a name that's based off of the religious name, but then doesn't use it. So we have Kalad, or Kalek, and then one of my touchstones for Alethi is I kind of go back to Arabic. So the idea is that there's some Arabic, there's some Hebrew way back when, and there have been influences of other naming conventions since. And so Alethi's kind of a mashup like English is, where you're going to have a bunch of different naming mechanisms. But Khalid and things like that are very common names in Saudi Arabia and things like that. And it just had this name that I'm like, I can use both of the right sounds. I can name them after a herald. And then as a bonus, I picked a way that it sounded like a word that people are familiar with, paladin, right? Kaladin. And these three things all came together. It took me forever to name Kaladin. His name was Marin in the initial version of The Way of Kings, which didn't ever work. Nobody liked it. It was fine, but nobody liked it. Even my early readers 20 years ago are like, are you sure you're going with Marin? And I'm like, well, it works with the linguistics and this and that, but I always knew I was going to have to change it eventually. But it took forever to find that. But that's where a lot of the names come from in the Stormlight Archive. Depends on the book, though. A lot of books, I'm leaning more on the touchstone linguistics for naming, like in Mistborn, where I'm using French names for the central dominance. I'm just leaning a lot harder on that. And that's where you see me accidentally using words in other languages that I didn't intend to. I did not know that Elend meant something in German. I just knew that I was using Germanic morphemes and sounds for building, the dominance that he was from. And I ended up using some words in German, which is going to happen when you build like this. So that's how I approach it. Though there are a lot of names that are based off of friends of mine that do not fit the linguistics, but that's okay because Alethi's got a mashup culture, particularly linguistically, and you're going to find some Phelan names, and you're going to find some even some Aegis names here and there. You're going to find a lot of Herdazian names just kind of mixed in with the Alethi.
Beluga Cavity from the chat on YouTube wants to know if you've had a favorite theory a fan presented to you that was wrong.
Ooh, favorite theory. Man, I read a lot of these. I don't remember a lot of them. They happen on Reddit where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Does not fit with the world building I'm building at all. Most of the ones that are really cool are ones that just couldn't work because of the fundamental kind of underpinnings of the Cosmere. People who theorize about my books, I like to feel that I put enough foreshadowing in my books that it makes, for those who are really paying attention, it does mean that you can guess it. So the surprises are not as dramatic, but I like that. And so a lot of the theories I read are right, because I've signposted them, right? And you guys have 3 years between books in the Stormlight Archive to guess on these things. But I read a lot more right theories than you might expect. But I do read a lot of wrong ones as well.
Megan Traxel wants to know how you choose your titles and if you have any unused working titles that you're willing to share.
I do not have any really unused working titles. For years, The Way of Kings was the book that I was going to write a book for someday, and that was the title that I just was in love with. You'll find that my title naming is very deeply influenced by the fantasy titling of the 80s and 90s. Me, George Martin, both are deeply influenced by basically what Tolkien did in kicking off epic fantasy. And so what feels right to me as a fantasy title often is something that feels like that. I could understand people wanting more difference there. Like the reason I named the Stormlight Archive the Stormlight Archive instead of the something such and such trilogy is because I was tired of saying the such and such trilogy or the such and such series. I wanted it to be something different, but I had good models in that, right? Like Wheel of Time is named the Wheel of Time, not the such and such trilogy or the such and such series. And even Lord of the Rings is called Lord of the Rings, not the Lord of the Rings, the Rings trilogy, which a lot of people have named it. So how do I come up with names? Gut instinct and what feels right, which is deeply, deeply influenced by the books that I read when I was younger.
Nicholas Medich wants to know where the inspiration for the Delvers and Starsight came from.
Delvers and Starsight came from me wanting to do interdimensional eldritch horror, basically. It was a mashup I was looking to do. I've always liked space Cthulhu, right? Space cosmic horror. I guess cosmic does that. Cosmic horror is a fun sort of storytelling attribute that I like, and it felt right to have these kind of interdimensional beings. I wanted something that did not see our reality and understand it, and something that was in many ways unknowable or couldn't be understood because of that. I wanted a true clash between something alien and the way that we see the world, because I knew I was going to have aliens in the books, but the aliens in the books were going to be weird but relatable. I wanted to try to build something that was much harder to relate to. Cosmic horror, that's interdimensional cosmic horror.
Ben Parrish says, which characters do you think would do well or poorly in an event of social distancing or quarantine? And what might they do to pass the time?
Oh boy, too many characters to deal with here, but let's just say that that Kaladin does not do well with isolation, and he would probably be top of the list of people. But it depends on if he has to social distance from his friend. Having a magical little piece of divinity slash natural force that can pass the time chatting with you is very handy. So let's say Kaladin would do very poorly in that regard. Who would do well social distancing? Who's the best of my characters at social distancing?
Well,
Vin.
if Vin can just fly.
What's that?
If Vin
Yeah.
can fly away from people, she'd probably be happy.
Yeah, Vin, plus she, going into hiding by herself, she could handle. Tensoon would be really good at it.
Marsh?
Yeah. What would they do to pass the time? I guess it depends on the character.
Lift would eat.
Lift would eat. Lift would just not social distance. She'd be really bad at this. She'd be super bad.
Well, she'd have to go heal people that had corona.
Yeah, she would have to go heal people that had corona. What would Kaladin do to pass the time? Train, probably. Nah, that's Kaladin. He'd try to do something worthwhile, quote unquote, with his time, rather than just relaxing and reading a book. Well, he can't read, so having a book read to him.
Brandon Axe wants to know what some early signs are that a story is working.
Early signs that a story is working. Well, the first and most useful early sign is that you are just finding it very fulfilling. The fact that you're not is not necessarily a death knell, but you should find, even if writing is hard, it should be fulfilling. I don't say easy because some good books are hard to write and some bad books are easy to write, but fulfilling. You get done with your day's work and you're like, wow, that stretched me. I'm really proud of that chapter. I have to add the asterisk here that there are some people whose psychology are never proud of anything, particularly on the first draft. And that doesn't mean that your book is bad. It just means that some people, it is very hard to feel proud of your work. But for most of us, we get an instinct for, wow, that chapter just worked. That chapter, I did something new. I did something hard. It snapped together. I didn't realize I was capable of making these kinds of connections. That's a really good sign, right? It's a really good sign that you're excited to get to the book. It's a really good sign that thinking about the book is something you continue to want to do. But the issue with all of these is it's going to depend on your own personal sort of psychology, right? Like for me, really good signs are these things. Really good signs that I get done with a day's work and I'm like, wow, that was a fantastic chapter. I was really worried about that chapter and it just sang. I get done with it and I'm like, I feel like it's working. I feel like this character is coming together. That people are going to be excited to read this character. This is different. This magic was really fun to write, but also really easy for people to understand. That's what happened with Mistborn. It was really fun to write because there were all sorts of different connections I could make as a writer. But when I was giving the early chapters to people, they're like, wow, I'm shocked by how intuitive this magic works from how weird the description of it is. That was a really good sign for Mistborn.
This one from Walker Edwards wants to know if you can talk a bit more about your life as an aspiring writer and hotel night clerk, and wants to know how you dealt with self-doubt, isolation, and seeing that you weren't quite good enough.
So I've talked about this a lot. Watch the video presentation I gave, the most recent thing, the keynote address. So that'll get into some of it. I don't want to repeat that story because enough people, I've told it enough times now. But in those early days, there are a couple of things that helped me. One was acknowledging that I didn't have to be great when I started. It was really handy for me to be able to say, I can just do this and enjoy it, and this doesn't have to earn me money right now. Maybe someday it will, but right now I can just write and explore writing. It was really liberating to me. The fact that a book has a natural progress, like the fact that I had something at the end that I could show people and be like, I spent 6 months doing this, was really fulfilling for me and helpful, even when part of me wondered, are you really going to be able to do this for a living? Well, at least I have something to show for it, right? At least I have this item that, people say, you're wasting your time. I'm like, I have this thing. I created this thing. It is right here. You can read it. It may not be good, but I did create it. Having that tangible thing was very handy to me. Basically having direction and progress in my life, right? Like one of the biggest benefits this whole writing thing has had for me is that I had a goal. I knew how to get to that goal. And I had something I was passionate about, and I could see myself progressing. Even if I wasn't there yet, I could see myself progressing. And that was really helpful. That was one of the things that distinguished me from a lot of my friends, was this idea that I treated it like goals, and it really helped me. Like I have a good friend in my writing group, and he doesn't write. He's not wanting to be a writer, but he's like, I've never found that thing in my life, Brandon, that you have that's like you wanted to dedicate yourself to it, and you just want to do it the rest of your life. He's like, some people don't have that, and it's okay for them to not have that. He had to, set me straight on that at one point, and he is right. It's okay. Not everybody is going to be deeply consumed by an all-powerful passion to create something. That's just one personality archetype that's out there. And I ended up with that. I consider myself very lucky because of it, because I was able to watch my progress in it and things. And when I was bad at it, I was still able to see myself progressing. And that was just really helpful for the way I work. And I think we're gonna call it here. Let's throw this guy over to me. We're gonna just show this guy off to you guys. We've been getting these. This is from our friends. We met them at which Comic Con was it?
Dragon Con.
It was Dragon Con. Forged Foam. They make stuff to fight, to do like HEMA sort of stuff, but with foam weapons, or maybe you're LARPing and things like that. And they made us some shard blades at one point, and they just made us a silk spear. We are actually going to try to get them a license. We're working on it. It's kind of tricky. So they can sell you foam shard blades that you can hit each other with, and shard spears you can hit each other with. So we are working on that. People ask us, can I buy a shard blade? We are working on it. So the Forged Foam guys should have something eventually.
We'll work on it.
And I have a bunch of these that I signed that we're going to send off to those people who sent us letters. So Patrick, you're going to get one whether you want one or not. Thank you guys all for watching. We will probably be back in 1 week instead of 2 this time, because if my mom is here, it'll be nice to have her on the stream. She's very fun to chat with. So take care, guys. Everyone stay safe during this pandemic time, and we will see you next week.